Throughout the rest of the course, you will hear us refer to our diet. It should be understood that when we refer to our diet, we mean as per the definition, the foods we habitually eat. We're not referring to any specific fad diet or short-term eating plan, unless we specifically say it. Cooking is arguably the most important invention in the history of the Homo species. Every animal on Earth is constrained by its energy budget. The calories obtained from their food will only stretch so far. Until recently, the earliest human hearths were dated to about 250,000 BC. Very recently, however, the discovery of charred bones and primitive stone tools in a cave in South Africa tentatively pushed that time back to roughly about 1 million years. So, what is cooking and why is it important?
Cooking can be defined as the use of fire, chopping and grinding. So what specific advantages does cooking provide us with? Well, first, it breaks down the connective tissue in meat, what we would say is the collagen, and it softens the walls of cells in plants to release stores of starch and fat. Cooking also relieves the burden on the gut by making digestion more effective, thus reducing the size of the gut and allowing for extra energy for the brain. Modern apes still have large guts and they have to process large quantities of food. So this basically freed up time for us, and as noted, great apes spend several hours per day just chewing. Earlier I said that we evolved alongside our food sources and actively sought those food sources out. So when it came to cooking, we cooked the foods that we were already eating, and this allowed us to gain even more energy from them. What did we evolve to eat? So stretching back through our evolutionary history, our dietary preferences have been for fat, meat, sweet and salty foods. Meat and fats have come in as sources of animals, nuts and seeds, while sweet foods came from seasonal nuts, berries, fruits and honey. Carbohydrates were consumed liberally in the form of vegetables, tubers and potatoes. So these are your root vegetables. These food sources were attained through a hunting and gathering lifestyle, which, depending on which region you lived, was seasonal and very active.
Potentially as far back as 150,000 years ago, hominids left the African continent. Moving into new areas meant eating a more varied diet. New prey could be difficult or dangerous to obtain. Wild game is also very lean, and protein alone does not support human life. In the absence of a ready source of fat, or when the hunt failed, hunters needed plant foods. Unlike meat, plants can be quite hard to digest. And compared to apes, humans have lost much of the ability to obtain energy from leaves. An alternative is starch, which is stored in plant roots or seeds. Our guts convert starches to sugar, especially if cooked. We can also use sugars from fruit for energy. Many plants are bitter or quite toxic, and they need special processing to make them edible. In each new habitat, our ancestors had to learn afresh what foods they could eat. In some cases, there are clear links between diet and human evolution. With limited access to plants, Inuit in the Arctic ate a high-fat, high-protein diet based on marine mammals. Their genes now actually show changes that protect against fish oil intake, very high fish oil intake. They also have cold-adapted genes that may have come from the Denisovans, a species or subspecies of Homo.
As you can see in the chart, there is a great deal of variance in the macronutrient breakdown between the groups. However, one thing these groups all have in common is their reliance on natural foods. Variations in the diet and the ability to digest certain foods is a recent adaptation caused by evolutionary pressure. You'll also notice that all the modern hunter-gatherer cultures mentioned eat meat. Indeed, there is currently no evidence that any culture existed in our entire history that was exclusively vegan. Modern day vegans require supplementation to fill in shortfalls in what would be a normal natural diet. Now, obviously, vitamin deficiency isn't something conducive to a thriving culture. The same cannot be said, however, for ancient vegetarians, for which there is plenty of evidence. This evidence, however, is linked closely to the environment rather than dietary preference. An ancestor who lived close to the sea is far more likely to consume fish over meat, because fish is more plentiful and obviously easier to catch. Expanding from Africa was a huge step. We had to adopt highly flexible behaviour to survive in new geographical regions, and migration drove even more change. The visible differences we see between non-African populations have all arisen in the past 70,000 years. In the next video, we're going to step sideways a little bit. Keeping our evolutionary history in mind, we're going to take a look at a key term: nutrient density.